What are your thoughts today, given what's happened in 2020?
Well, it's hard to even keep track of the money supply now officially because the Federal Reserve isn't reporting about it as often as they were. But we know for a fact that it is exploding because you can look at the government's own numbers of tax revenues versus expenditures. And right now, for every $3.50 the government spends, they only have $1 in revenue. So where is that money coming from? And I mean, we're not getting it for free. So 70% of government spending is being borrowed. But who is the government borrowing from? Well, a large portion of it is the Federal Reserve. And when the government borrows from the Fed prints the money to loan to the US government. And so that is the inflation. Money supply is exploding. That's why you're seeing all these strong numbers for consumer spending, because consumers are simply spending the money that they're getting from the government. In fact, a lot of people are getting more money from the government now, unemployed, than they used to get from their employers when they had jobs. But there's a big difference. When you are working and being compensated for your productivity, that's not necessarily inflation because you're adding goods and services to the economy that other people can buy. But if you're just sitting at home and collecting a government check, you're not adding any goods and services into the economy, but you're getting money to take goods and services out of the economy. But what that means is that prices go up because that's all that's going to happen. In the short run, though, we're seeing a huge influx of imports because we're importing the things that we're not producing. And that's why you're seeing the container ships, queued up, with these record long lines. We're seeing trade deficits larger than any trade deficits we've ever seen, particularly in merchandise, manufactured stuff, unprecedented records. And this is a result of all this money printing. But none of it is economic growth. Don't confuse what's happening with a growing economy. There's no economic growth at all. We're spending printed money as the real economy contracts.
So when we see potentially 6% GDP this year, we shouldn't be necessarily rejoicing.
No, because you have to keep it into context. How did we get it? Oh, we borrowed a bunch of money and spent it. And where'd the borrowed money come from? Well, the Fed printed it. That is not a healthy economy. A healthy economy is when you don't need to run big deficits. It's when the government is collecting taxes from businesses and individuals who are making more money, and the government doesn't have to spend as much money to try to support the economy because it doesn't need the help. But when the government is spending record amounts of money on unemployment benefits and on other social spending programs, that's not a sign of a strong economy. When the trade deficits are at record highs, that's not a sign of a strong economy. So nothing about the economy is strength other than the printing of money. But any country can print money. Unfortunately, when you do that, the result is a disaster. At least that's what's happened historically.
And they are, right? We're not the only ones doing this.
Well, I'm referring to other nations in the past that have basically tried to base their entire economy off of this concept. I mean, all countries around the world are printing too much money, but they're not really doing what America is doing. Because our trade deficits are only possible because other countries have trade surpluses. So the countries that are running trade surpluses, well, they have viable economies. Their economies are actually growing because they're able to produce all this stuff that we're buying. It's the American economy that's not growing because we have to rely on what other economies that are growing produce because we're not producing. But this only works until the dollar crashes. And I think a dollar crash is coming our way very soon.
Do you think that there is an end in sight for the rising prices of lumber and building costs, building supplies?
Well, in terms of US dollars, probably not. But yes, in terms of gold, sure, the prices are going to come down. But I think it's going to be a while before we see the price of any commodities coming down in dollars, at least in a significant way. I mean, sure, there can be slight declines. But I think it's more likely that if we're going to see a decline, it'll be in the equity market, stock market. We had record highs recently in the U.S. stock markets. And so those prices, to me, if any prices are going to fall, it may be those. Although even those prices may not go down in dollar terms. You get enough inflation and the price of everything is going to go up. But that doesn't mean the value of those things are going up. In fact, if you price them in gold or other commodities or even other foreign currencies, you'll see a different picture. You could see the markets really losing value even as the dollar price is going up.
Well, it's really confusing because on the one hand, the Fed or the government is saying that inflation is low and that, we can't hit the 2% target. And yet in housing, we're seeing double digit, increases, and the stock market's gone up as well. So is it that all this money is going into stocks and real estate? Or why aren't we seeing inflation?
Well, we are. I mean, the government is trying its best to hide it from us. One of the ways they do that is by measuring it incorrectly with the CPI. That index is specifically designed to hide inflation, not to reveal it. And so the way the methodology for calculating the index was developed, it was developed in such a way that it would understate the degree to which consumer prices are rising. So that's one of the reasons you don't see it, is because the government lies. But also, companies try to find clever ways to avoid raising prices. They do other things. They give you a smaller quantity. They substitute lower quality ingredients. Look, my son just is flying to Puerto Rico today, and he told me that his suitcase was 6 pounds overweight. And so in addition to the $35 that he paid to check the bag, it was an extra $150 for the overweight fee. Now, I don't remember the fees being that high. And I think when the government measures the price of tickets, they don't look at those things like excess baggage charges. They just look at the ticket. I mean, I remember when all the bags were free. And now they charge you for checking bags. So, that's probably not included in the CPI, because they probably just look at the ticket price and they don't adjust from the fact that, well, now you don't get baggage. In fact, you don't even get a meal if you're traveling in coach. You don't get anything. You don't get a pillow. You don't get a blanket. They've really cut back on the quality of the service so that they can avoid having a bigger increase in the price. Then they have higher fees if you want to change your flight. You want to book a different time. So a lot of this stuff doesn't get incorporated in there. But also, you talk about real estate. I mean, what's going on here in Puerto Rico is phenomenal. I mean, prices, I think, have literally doubled just in 2021, maybe tripled.
Wow.
It is absolutely insane what's happening. I guess it's not the entirety of Puerto Rico, but it is just my neighborhood, my community. But literally, I mean, people are turning down offers, unsolicited offers of 2 to 3 times what they paid for their properties because they have nowhere to go if they sell. So, I mean, this, and I know that the rest of the country is not this extreme, but I've heard anecdotal evidence from other people, clients who are telling me what's going on in their local real estate markets. And this despite record numbers of Americans who are not in the workforce. So how are all these people who aren't working affording houses? And how are they spending all this money? Well, we already know the answer. They're getting it from the government. But the only reason that money has value is because foreigners are still dumb enough to accept it in exchange for the stuff that they produce. Because the stuff that they produce has real value. The money we print doesn't.